The dead moon of Vethkar had no life. It had no water. It had air so thin and poisonous that most species in the galaxy would die within minutes of breathing it. This was exactly why the Galactic Convergence chose it for their trials. Only the strongest survived here. Only the worthy proved themselves on this gray, lifeless rock floating in the darkness of Space Ambassador. Kira Velshan stood in the observation deck, high above the arena floor. She was Ethori, one of the oldest and most powerful species in the known galaxy. Her skin was pale blue, almost silver in certain lights. She had 4 eyes, all of them a deep violet color that seemed to glow softly in the dim room. She had lived for over 300 years, and in that time, she had watched countless trials in this very arena. She expected nothing different today. The observation deck was filled with representatives from dozens of species. They sat in comfortable chairs, drinking expensive beverages and placing bets on the fights below. For them, this was entertainment, a way to pass the time between diplomatic meetings and trade negotiations. Admiral Zethron sat beside Kira. He was also Ethori, older than her by 2 centuries, with a permanent expression of boredom on his angular face. He had seen everything the galaxy had to offer, and none of it impressed him anymore. "The humans are sending someone today," he said, not looking up from his data tablet. "Apparently one of their ships was captured near the border. They want their crew back." Kira nodded slowly. She knew about humans. Everyone in the galaxy knew about humans. They were a young species, having only discovered faster than light travel about 200 years ago. In the galactic terms, they were children. Babies, really. Most of the elder species viewed them with a mixture of curiosity and concern. Humans were strange. They came from a planet that seemed designed to kill them. Their world had ice ages, massive volcanic eruptions, asteroid impacts, and countless plagues. By all logic, they should have gone extinct long ago. But they hadn't. They kept surviving, kept growing, kept reaching for the stars. "How many warriors are they sending?" Kira asked. Zethron laughed softly. One? Kira turned to look at him. "The Kethvari are providing 12 hunters for this trial. The humans are sending 1 warrior? Apparently he volunteered. His name is Cole Bennett, a lieutenant from their vessel called the Starward Horizon." Zethron shook his head with amusement. "Humans, they never learn. Their pride will be their extinction." Kira said nothing. She turned her attention to the arena floor below, where the massive doors were beginning to open. First came the Kethvari hunters. They were terrifying creatures, each one standing over 8 feet tall. Their bodies were covered in natural armor that could stop most weapons. Their claws could cut through metal. Their teeth were designed for tearing flesh from bone. 12 of them entered the arena, spreading out in a wide circle, growling and snapping their jaws. The crowd in the observation deck cheered and clapped. The Kethvari were favorites in these trials. They rarely lost. Then the opposite door opened, and a single figure walked out. Cole Bennett was not impressive to look at. He was average height for a human, maybe 6 feet tall. He wore simple combat armor that looked old and worn. He carried no advanced weapons, just a standard military rifle and a combat knife strapped to his leg. His face was calm, almost peaceful, as he walked to the center of the arena. The crowd laughed. "Look at him," someone said nearby. "He's tiny. This will be over in seconds." Kira studied the human with growing interest. There was something about the way he moved. Something about the way his eyes scanned the Kethvari hunters without any trace of fear. Most species showed some physical sign of terror when facing certain death. Their hearts beat faster. Their breathing became quick and shallow. Their bodies trembled. Cole Bennett showed none of these signs. He stood perfectly still, perfectly calm, as if he were simply waiting for a friend to arrive. Does he not understand what is about to happen? Kira murmured. The arena's announcement system activated, and a booming voice filled the space. Lieutenant Cole Bennett of Earth, you stand before the Convergence to fight for the freedom of your captured crew. 12 souls await your victory or your death. Do you understand the terms? Cole nodded once. I understand. Do you wish to make any final statements before the trial begins? Cole was quiet for a moment. Then he reached up and removed his helmet. The crowd gasped. Without his helmet, he was directly exposed to Vethkar's poisonous atmosphere. His lungs should have started burning immediately. His eyes should have begun to bleed. Within 30 seconds, he should have collapsed. Instead, he simply took a deep breath and smiled. On Earth, he said, his voice carrying through the arena speakers. We call this Tuesday. Kira leaned forward in her seat. Her 4 eyes were wide with surprise. Humans could not survive in this atmosphere. It was scientifically impossible. And yet this man was standing there, breathing the toxic air, smiling at the creatures that were about to try to kill him. How is he doing that? She whispered. Zeth single quotes. Ron frowned, checking his data tablet. Humans have remarkable adaptation abilities. Their bodies can adjust to hostile environments in ways we don't fully understand. But even so, he won't last long. The Kethvari will finish him quickly. The trial horn sounded, a deep booming note that echoed across the dead moon's surface. The Kethvari hunters began to circle, closing the distance, preparing to attack from all sides at once. Their strategy was simple and effective. Overwhelm the target. Tear it apart. Move on. Cole Bennett did not move. He stood in the center of the closing circle, watching each hunter with those calm, steady eyes. He rolled his shoulders once, loosening his muscles. He adjusted his grip on his knife. The first Kethvari attacked. It was the largest of the 12, eager to claim the first kill. It charged forward with incredible speed, claws extended, jaws open wide. Cole moved. Kira had never seen anything move like that. One moment he was standing still. The next he was somewhere else entirely. The Kethvari's claws cut through empty air. Cole was already behind it, his knife finding the small gap between the armor plates at the base of the creature's skull. The hunter fell without making a sound. The arena went silent. Cole pulled his knife free and turned to face the remaining 11 hunters. Blood dripped from his blade onto the gray sand below. His expression had not changed at all. He was still calm, still peaceful. Next, he said quietly. Kira Velshin felt something shift inside her chest. It was a feeling she had not experienced in 300 years of life. It was a feeling her species was not supposed to have. It was fascination. Deep, dangerous, undeniable fascination. She could not look away. The second Kethvari learned from the first one's mistake. It did not charge blindly. Instead, it circled slowly, watching Cole with predator eyes, waiting for an opening. 2 more hunters moved to flank him, cutting off his escape routes. Cole did not try to escape. He walked toward them. The crowd in the observation deck murmured with confusion. Every species in the galaxy understood the basic rules of survival. When you are outnumbered, you run. When you are outmatched, you hide. When you are facing certain death, you beg for mercy. Humans apparently did not understand these rules. The 3 Kethvari attacked together. It was a coordinated strike, perfectly timed, designed to overwhelm any single target. Claws came from the left, from the right, from above. There was no way to dodge all of them. There was no way to survive. Cole dropped to his knees at the last possible moment. The claws passed over his head, and the 3 hunters crashed into each other with bone-breaking force. Before they could recover, Cole was moving again. His knife found one throat. His elbow shattered a second hunter's jaw. The third tried to retreat, but Cole grabbed its arm and used its own momentum to throw it to the ground. Three more bodies lay still on the gray sand. Kira was standing now. She did not remember getting up from her chair. Her hands were pressed against the observation window, her four eyes tracking every movement below. Her hearts were beating fast, both of them, which was a physical response she had not felt in decades. "This is not possible," Zethron said beside her. His voice had lost its boredom. Now it carried something else, fear. "Humans are weak. Their bodies are fragile. They have no natural weapons." "He is not weak," Kira whispered. "Look at him." Cole was breathing hard now. The toxic atmosphere was starting to affect him. Red lines appeared at the corners of his eyes, where blood vessels were beginning to break. His movements were slightly slower than before, but he did not stop. He did not even pause. The remaining 8 Kethvari had formed a tight group. They were communicating in their own language, low growls and clicking sounds that meant nothing to the observers above. But their body language was clear. They were afraid. 8 apex predators, each one capable of killing most species with a single blow, were afraid of one human with a knife. Cole gave them no time to plan. He attacked. What followed was not a battle. It was something closer to art. Brutal, bloody art painted in shades of violence that Kira had never witnessed before. Cole moved through the hunters like water flowing around stones. Every strike was precise. Every movement had purpose. He was not fighting with rage or desperation. He was fighting with something colder and more controlled. He was fighting with absolute certainty that he would win. The 5th hunter fell when Cole used its own claw to open its chest. The 6th died when he drove his knife through its eye socket into its brain. The 7th tried to grab him from behind, but Cole reversed his grip and stabbed backward without even looking. By the time the 8th body hit the ground, Cole was covered in blood. Most of it was not his own. His combat armor was torn in several places, and Kira could see wounds underneath. Deep cuts, broken skin. His left arm was hanging at a wrong angle, clearly damaged badly. He did not seem to notice. The 9th Kethvari charged with a desperate scream. Cole sidestepped and let it run past him, then jumped on its back and snapped its neck with his bare hands. The 10th tried to flee. It ran toward the arena doors, pounding on them with its massive fists, begging to be released. The doors did not open. They never opened during a trial. Cole walked up behind it slowly, almost casually, and ended its life with a single thrust of his knife. Now only 2 remained. These were the smartest of the group. They had hung back during the fighting, watching, learning. They had seen what Cole could do, and they had developed a strategy. One of them grabbed a large piece of debris from the ground and threw it at Cole while the other circled around to attack from behind. Cole caught the debris with his damaged arm. The impact clearly caused him tremendous pain. For the first time, his expression changed. His jaw tightened. His eyes narrowed. But he did not fall. He did not cry out. He threw the debris back. It struck the first hunter in the chest with enough force to knock it backward. Before it could recover, Cole was already there, driving his knife into its throat again and again until it stopped moving. The last Kethvari stood alone. It was young, Kira realized. Younger than the others. Perhaps this was its first trial. It had come here expecting glory and honor. It had expected to prove itself to its species by killing the weak human. Now it faced that human alone, surrounded by the bodies of its companions. Cole walked toward it slowly. Blood dripped from his knife, from his wounds, from the corner of his mouth where he had bitten through his own lip. His left arm was useless now. His breathing was ragged and wet, suggesting damage to his lungs from the toxic air. But he kept walking. the young HFY dropped to its knees. It lowered its head. It was surrendering. In HFY culture, surrender meant accepting death with honor rather than fighting and losing. Cole stopped in front of it. He looked down at the creature for a long moment. The entire arena was silent. The crowd in the observation deck held their breath. Then Cole put away his knife. "Get up," he said quietly. "Go home. Tell your people what you saw here today." The young HFY looked up with confusion in its eyes. No one had ever spared a defeated enemy in the arena before. It was not done. It was against the ancient rules. But Cole Bennett did not seem to care about ancient rules. He turned away from the last hunter and walked to the center of the arena. He stood among the bodies of 11 elite warriors. His body was broken and bleeding. His lungs were filling with toxic air. By all medical standards, he should have been dead. He looked up at the observation deck, directly at the window where Kira was standing. He could not possibly see through the one-way glass. He could not possibly know she was there. But somehow, it felt like he was looking right at her. "My crew," Cole said, his voice carrying through the arena speakers. "Release them, now." The observation deck erupted into chaos. Representatives were shouting, arguing, demanding explanations. How had this happened? How had one human defeated 12 HFY hunters? It was impossible. It was against everything they understood about the galaxy. But Kira Velshin was not shouting. She was not arguing. She was simply standing at the window, watching the broken human below, feeling something she had never felt before. Something that had no name in her language. Something that went against 300 years of careful, emotional control. She wanted to know more. About Cole Bennett. She wanted to understand what made humans fight. When they should surrender, she wanted to know him. And that wanting was the most dangerous thing she had ever experienced. 3 days passed after the arena trial. 3 days during which Kira Velshan could not stop thinking about the human. She tried to focus on her diplomatic duties. She attended meetings. She signed documents. She smiled and nodded and said all the right things to all the right people. But her mind kept returning to that moment in the arena. The moment when Cole Bennett looked up at the observation deck and demanded his crew back. The Convergence had granted his request. They had no choice. He had won the trial fairly. His 12 crew members were released from the prison station and reunited with their lieutenant. They were currently being treated in the medical bay while their ship, the Starbound Horizon, was being repaired. They would leave soon. Cole would leave soon. And Kira would never see him again. This thought bothered her more than it should have. On the 4th night, Kira found herself in her private quarters, accessing the Dominion's information archives. She told herself she was just curious. She was an ambassador. It was her job to understand other species. There was nothing unusual about researching humans, but as she read file after file, watched video after video, she knew she was lying to herself. Human history was terrifying. Their planet had tried to kill them countless times. Ice ages that lasted thousands of years. Volcanic eruptions that blocked out their sun. Asteroid impacts that wiped out most life on their world. And through all of it, through every disaster and catastrophe, humans had survived. Not because they were strong. Not because they were fast or powerful. Humans were actually quite weak compared to most galactic species. They had no claws, no armor, no venom or psychic abilities. Their senses were average at best. A human child would lose a fight against many alien creatures, and yet they survived. Kira watched recordings of human soldiers carrying their wounded companions across frozen wastelands for days without rest. She read accounts of human mothers lifting vehicles with their bare hands to save their children. She studied reports of human explorers walking through deserts and jungles and mountains that should have killed them. Adrenaline, she murmured, reading the scientific explanations. They have a chemical in their blood that temporarily removes their physical limitations when they are threatened. But it was more than just chemistry. There was something else. Something the scientists could not explain. Humans called it will, or determination, or simply stubbornness. When a human decided to do something, they did it. When a human decided to survive, they survived. When a human decided to protect something they loved, nothing in the galaxy could stop them. Kira accessed Cole Bennett's personal file. She learned that he was 34 years old. He had been born in a place called Montana on Earth. He had joined the Earth fleet at age 18 and had served for 16 years. He had been in dozens of combat situations. He had been wounded multiple times. His psychological profile was interesting. The fleet doctors had noted that Cole showed unusual levels of determination and focus. In situations where other soldiers would give up, Cole kept fighting. In situations where retreat was the logical choice, Cole advanced. Subject appears to have an unusually high tolerance for pain and adversity, one report stated. Recommend close monitoring for potential self-destructive tendencies. Kira closed the file and stared at the wall of her quarters. A reflection looked back at her from the polished surface. 4 violet eyes. Pale blue skin. 300 years of careful emotional control. All of it crumbling because of one human. The door chime sounded, and Admiral Zethron entered without waiting for permission. He was carrying a data tablet, and his expression was cold. You have accessed the human's files 47 times in the past 3 days, he said without greeting. The council has noticed. Kira stood slowly. I am conducting research. As an ambassador, it is my duty to understand the species we encounter. Do not lie to me, Kira. Zethron walked closer, his voice dropping to a quiet hiss. I have known you for 2 centuries. I have never seen you show interest in anything except your work. And now you are obsessed with a human. A human. I am not obsessed. 47 file accesses. 3 visits to the medical bay where his crew is being treated. 2 requests to the docking authority for updates on his ship's repair status. Zethron shook his head. You are obsessed, and it must stop. Kira felt anger rise in her chest. It was another emotion she had not felt in a very long time. Why must it stop? What harm am I causing? The harm is to yourself. Zethron's voice softened slightly. Kira, you know our laws. Aetheri do not form bonds with lesser species. We do not feel attraction in the way other races do. Our partnerships are based on genetics and politics, not on emotions. And if I feel something different, then you bury it. You control it. You do what our species has done for 10,000 years. Zethron placed his hand on her shoulder. It was meant to be comforting, but Kira felt nothing from his touch. The human is leaving tomorrow. His ship will be repaired by morning. He will return to Earth space, and you will never see him again. This is for the best. Kira said nothing. She let Zethron believe she agreed with him. She nodded at the right moments. She promised to focus on her duties. She watched him leave her quarters with a satisfied expression on his face. Then she sat alone in the darkness and thought about Cole Bennett. She thought about the way he had refused to show fear. The way he had spared the last Kethvari hunter when killing it would have been easier. The way he had looked up at the observation deck with those calm, steady eyes. The Aetheri believed that emotions were weaknesses. They had spent thousands of years breeding out strong feelings, creating a species that operated on pure logic and reason. They looked down on other races that let their hearts guide their actions. But watching Cole fight alone against impossible odds, Kira had felt something she never expected. She had felt admiration. She had felt wonder. She had felt a pull toward this strange, stubborn, impossibly determined human, and she had whispered words to herself that no ethery should ever whisper. He must belong to me. The thought was dangerous. The thought was forbidden. The thought went against everything her species believed. But Kira could not make it go. Away, she stood up and walked to her window. Outside, the stars stretched endlessly into the darkness. Somewhere out there was Earth, the impossible planet that had created the impossible humans. Somewhere out there was a future that Kira had never imagined for herself. Tomorrow, Cole would leave. But tonight, Kira made a decision. She would not let him go without speaking to him first. She would not let this feeling fade away without understanding it. She would not be controlled by ancient laws and genetic programming. For the first time in 300 years, Kira Velshin was going to do something because she wanted to do it. Not because it was logical. Not because it was expected. Not because it served the Dominion's interests. Because she wanted to. And that was the most human thing she had ever done. The docking bay was quiet in the early morning hours. Most of the station's residents were still sleeping, and the maintenance crews had finished their work on the starward horizon. The human ship sat on the landing platform, fully repaired and ready for departure. Cole Bennett was alone, running final checks on the hull when he heard footsteps behind him. He turned and saw an ethery woman walking toward him through the dim light. She was tall and graceful, with pale blue skin and 4 violet eyes that seemed to glow softly in the darkness. He recognized her immediately. She had been in the observation deck during his trial. He had felt her watching him, even through the one-way glass. He did not know how he had known, but he had known. "Ambassador," he said calmly. "It's early for a diplomatic visit." Kira stopped a few feet away from him. She had not prepared what she was going to say. She had walked here on impulse, following a feeling rather than a plan. Now that she was standing in front of him, all her words seemed to disappear. "I watched you fight," she finally said. "In the arena. I know. How did you know?" Cole shrugged slightly. "I just did. Humans are good at knowing when we're being watched. Survival instinct." Kira nodded slowly. She studied his face, looking for the damage from the trial. Most of his wounds had healed. Human medical technology was good, and their bodies recovered remarkably fast. But she could see faint scars on his hands and neck, permanent reminders of what he had done. "You fight like someone who has nothing left to lose," she said quietly. Cole's expression did not change, but something shifted in his eyes. A small flash of emotion that he quickly controlled. "I fight like someone who has everything to protect. Your crew, my family, my planet. Every human who ever looked up at the stars and wondered if we were alone." He paused and looked up at the ceiling of the docking bay, as if he could see through it to the stars beyond. "We always knew the answer would be dangerous. We knew that when we left Earth, we would find things that could destroy us. Species bigger than us, stronger than us, more advanced than us. And yet you came anyway. We had to. That's what humans do. We see something impossible, and we try it anyway. We see something dangerous, and we walk toward it anyway. We see something beautiful, and we reach for it anyway." He looked back at her with those steady eyes. "It's not brave. It's just who we are." Kira felt her heart beating faster. Both of them. She stepped closer to him, close enough to feel the warmth radiating from his body. Humans ran hot compared to most species. Their internal temperature was several degrees higher than the galactic average. Scientists did not fully understand why. "The Dominion has laws against my interest in you," she said softly. "And yet here you are," Cole replied. "In a dark docking bay, alone with a human. Breaking those laws. Yes, why?" It was such a simple question, but the answer was complicated. The answer involved 300 years of following rules, 300 years of burying feelings, 300 years of being exactly what her species expected her to be. I watched you refuse to die, Kira said. I watched you face 12 enemies with nothing but a knife and your own will. I watched you spare the last one when killing it would have been easier. And I found myself thinking thoughts that my species is not supposed to think. What thoughts? Kira reached out slowly. Her slender fingers hovered over his shoulder, just above the place where a Kethvari claw had cut through his armor. Among her people, this gesture had deep meaning. It was an offer of healing, of connection, of bonding. It was called a claiming, and it was the most intimate act an Aethery could perform. I found myself thinking, she whispered, so softly that only he could hear, that he must belong to me. Cole was quiet for a long moment. He looked at her hand, still hovering over his shoulder. He looked at her 4 violet eyes, filled with emotions that she had never allowed herself to feel before. He looked at this strange, beautiful, ancient creature who had come to him in the darkness, because she could not stay away. I don't belong to anyone, Ambassador, he said finally. Humans don't work like that. We don't belong to people. We choose to be with them. I understand. Do you? Cole took a step closer. Now they were very close. Close enough that Kira could feel his breath on her skin. If you come with me, your people will never take you back. You'll give up everything. Your position, your status, your entire life. I know. You've lived for 300 years. You have 200 or 300 more ahead of you. You would spend them with a human who will be dead in 50 or 60 years. I know. Then why? Why would you give up everything for someone you just met? Kira finally let her fingers touch his shoulder. The contact sent electricity through her entire body. Aethery were touch telepaths, able to sense emotions through physical contact. What she felt from Cole Bennett nearly overwhelmed her. She felt determination so strong it was like a physical force. She felt loyalty so deep it had no bottom. She felt pain that he carried silently, losses that he never spoke about, sacrifices that he had made without complaint. And underneath all of that, she felt something warm and bright and powerful. Hope. Despite everything he had seen, despite everything he had suffered, despite the scars on his body and the wounds on his soul, Cole Bennett still hoped. He still believed that tomorrow could be better than today. He still reached for the stars, even though he knew they could burn him. This is why, Kira whispered. This feeling, this light inside you. My species removed this from ourselves thousands of years ago. We thought it made us weak. We thought logic and reason were better. A tear rolled down her cheek, silver against her blue skin. But watching you fight, I realized we were wrong. This is not weakness. This is the greatest strength in the galaxy. Cole raised his hand and gently wiped the tear from her face. His touch was warm. So warm. I'm not asking you to give up everything, he said quietly. I'm not asking you for anything. I know. That is why I'm offering. Kira took a deep breath. Cole Bennett of Earth, I am claiming you. Not as property, not as possession, but as partner. I am choosing to stand beside you. I am choosing to face whatever comes next with you. Will you accept? For a long moment, Cole said nothing. He just looked at her with those calm, steady eyes that had faced death without flinching. Then, slowly, a small smile appeared on his face. It was the first time she had seen him smile genuinely. Partnership, he said. I can work with that. He took her hand in his, their fingers intertwining. Human and Aethery. Young species and ancient one. Two people who should never have met, standing together in a dark docking bay, making a choice that would change both their lives forever. When do we leave? Kira asked. Right now. Before anyone realizes you're gone. The Dominion will not be happy. The Dominion can deal with it. Cole squeezed her hand gently. You made your choice. I made mine. The rest of the galaxy can catch up when it's ready. Kira felt something she had not felt in 300 years. She felt free. Together, they walked up the ramp into the starward horizon. Together, they prepared for departure. Together, they faced the unknown future. And for the first time in her very long life, Kira Velshin was not afraid of what came next. The news spread across the galaxy like fire. An Aetheri ambassador had abandoned her position. She had left with a human, a simple military lieutenant from a young and unimportant species. She had broken 17 treaties and violated 2,000 years of genetic policy. She had made a choice that threatened the very foundation of galactic order. The Dominion Council was furious. They demanded Kira's immediate return. They threatened Earth with economic sanctions, trade restrictions, and possible military action. They called emergency meetings with every major power in the galaxy. And in the middle of all this chaos, Cole Bennett and Kira Velshan stood before the Galactic Assembly, facing representatives from 30 different species. The assembly hall was enormous. A vast circular chamber with seats rising in tiers toward a distant ceiling. Holographic displays showed the faces of billions of beings watching from across the galaxy. This was the most important political event in decades, and everyone wanted to see what would happen. Cole stood at the center of the chamber, still wearing the same worn combat armor he had worn in the arena. His wounds had healed, but he carried new ones now. Someone had tried to kill him during their journey here. 3 different times. He had survived all 3 attempts. Kira stood beside him, her blue skin almost glowing under the bright lights. She had changed out of her ambassador robes and now wore simple clothing that had no rank or status attached to it. She was no longer Ambassador Velshan of the Aetheri Dominion. She was just Kira, just herself. The Dominion's representative spoke first. He was old, older even than Zethron, and his voice carried the weight of millennia. This human has stolen one of our most valuable citizens. He has corrupted her mind with primitive emotions. He must be punished, and she must be returned to us for rehabilitation. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the chamber. Many species nodded their heads. The Aetheri had been dominant for 10,000 years. Their word was usually law, but Cole did not seem impressed. I didn't steal anyone, he said calmly. Ambassador Velshin made her own choice. Free will. It's kind of a big deal where I come from. Humans have no understanding of the complexity of galactic politics, the representative snapped. Your species is barely 2 centuries old. You are children playing at adulthood. Maybe. Cole shrugged. But these children managed to beat 12 Cathvari hunters in single combat. These children have survived everything the universe has thrown at us. And these children don't bow down to bullies just because they've been bullying for a long time. The chamber erupted into angry shouts. Cole waited patiently until the noise died down, then continued speaking. You've spent millennia studying us, containing us, deciding what we're capable of and what we deserve. You look at humans and see a young species with weak bodies and short lives. You think you understand us. He paused and looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of dozens of different species. You don't understand anything, he pointed at Kira. This woman watched me fight for my crew. She watched me refuse to give up when giving up was the smart choice. And something inside her responded to that. Something you've been trying to breathe out of your species for thousands of years. You call it weakness. We call it heart. Kira stepped forward and added her voice to his. I have served the Dominion faithfully for 3 centuries. I have followed every rule. I have suppressed every emotion. I have been exactly what my people wanted me to be. And I was empty. I was hollow. I was alive, but I was not living. She looked at the Dominion representative with all 4 of her violet eyes. Then I watched a human choose to fight impossible odds rather than abandon his friends. and I felt something I had forgotten was possible. I felt hope. The representative shook his head. You have been corrupted. Your judgment cannot be trusted. You must come home and be healed. I am not sick, Kira said firmly. I am awake. For the first time in 300 years, I am truly awake. The chamber fell into tense silence. The fate of two people hung in the balance. But more than that, the fate of an idea hung in the balance. The idea that emotions were not weaknesses. The idea that choice mattered more than genetics. The idea that a young species could teach an old. Once something new dawned, then something unexpected happened. A representative from one of the younger species stood up. He was Venturi, from a world that had only joined the galactic community a century ago. His people were still considered second-class citizens by the elder powers. The human speaks truth, he said. His people have something we should all want. They have the courage to feel, the strength to love, the will to fight for what matters. Perhaps instead of containing them, we should be learning from them. Another representative stood. Then another. Then another. One by one, the younger species began to show their support. They had all been treated as lesser beings by the Dominion. They had all been told they were not good enough. And now they saw a chance to say that was wrong. Cole took Kira's hand, the gesture visible to billions across the galaxy. We're not asking for permission, he said. We're not requesting approval. We made our choice. She chose me. I chose her. That's all that matters. If your laws can handle two people choosing each other across species lines, maybe the problem isn't us. Maybe the problem is your laws. The Dominion representative's face was dark with anger. You dare to lecture us? Your species will be dust while we still rule the stars. Maybe, Cole admitted. But I'd rather live one human lifetime with real feelings than 1,000 years feeling nothing at all. He looked at Kira with warmth in his eyes. She's worth it. Every moment with her is worth it. Kira squeezed his hand. For 300 years, she had been told that emotions were dangerous. That attachment was foolish. That love was a primitive impulse that civilized species had evolved beyond on. Now she knew the truth. Love was not weakness. Love was power. Love was the force that made a single human stand against impossible odds. Love was the light that burned in Cole Bennett's heart. The light that she had finally allowed to burn in her own. I choose my own future, she said to the assembly, her voice carrying to every corner of the galaxy. And I choose him. The vote that followed was close. But in the end, enough species supported the idea of free choice over genetic programming. The Dominion's demands were denied. Cole and Kira were allowed to remain together, though it was not a total victory. The elder powers were still angry. There would be consequences. There would be challenges ahead. But as Cole and Kira walked out of the assembly chamber together, hand in hand, they did not care about what came next. They cared only about what they had found. A human who refused to give up. An Aetheri who learned to feel again. Two people from different worlds, different species, different lifetimes, who had chosen each other against all odds. Outside, the stars waited. The universe stretched endlessly in every direction, full of danger and wonder and possibility. Where do we go now? Kira asked. Cole smiled and pulled her close. Anywhere we want. That's the human way. We see the impossible, and we reach for it anyway. Even when it might destroy us. Especially then. He kissed her forehead gently. That's what makes it worth doing. Kira Velshan, former ambassador of the Aetheri Dominion, looked up at the stars with new eyes. She had given up everything she had known. She had broken every rule her species held sacred, and she had never been happier, because she had found something worth more than power, or position, or eternal life. She had found someone worth fighting for, someone worth living for. Someone who had taught her that the greatest strength in the galaxy was not logic or reason or genetic perfection, Dodd. It was heart. Simple, stubborn, beautiful heart. The universe would never be the same again. And that was exactly how it should be.